Chapter 236, Erik's Demand and Emma's Desperation. I won't go. The words left my mouth with more conviction than I felt, my hands gripping the edge of the dining table. Erik's amber eyes narrowed slightly, the temperature in the room seeming to drop several degrees. It's not up to you. My heart, already racing from our tense exchange, began pounding uncontrollably against my ribs. The breakfast in front of me, the meal I'd been so desperate for minutes ago, suddenly turned unappetizing. Erik glanced at his expensive watch, then ran his cold gaze over my borrowed clothes. You have 10 minutes. Go change. I'm really not going, I insisted, digging my heels in despite the fear coursing through my veins. My lower lip trembled as I bit down on it, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. I'd always considered myself relatively brave. Back in the Northern Territories, as Olivia Chase's daughter, I navigated pack politics with confidence. But here, alone in Erik Blackwood's domain, with memories of silver bullets still fresh in my mind, I felt utterly helpless. You have 8 minutes left, Erik stated, his voice devoid of warmth. His expression remained perfectly neutral, which somehow made it even more terrifying. You know I'm not discussing this with you. Faced with such overwhelming dominance, the tears I'd been fighting finally welled up. I couldn't help the hint of resentment that crept into my gaze as I stared back at him. Erik sighed heavily, rubbing his temple as if my resistance was giving him a headache. Still not going? His tone suggested he found this entire exchange tedious. I could almost hear his thoughts. She-wolves were troublesome, especially ones who cried at the slightest provocation. No, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. Something dangerous flickered in Erik's eyes. I remembered the cold efficiency with which he'd handled the rogue wolves who pursued us. The memory sent a shiver down my spine. 7 minutes, he said simply, taking a sip of his coffee. I sat frozen, torn between self-preservation and the terrifying prospect of defying an alpha of Erik's caliber. My wolf whimpered beneath my skin, urging submission. The scent of freshly prepared venison medallions wafted through the dining room at Shadow Valley. On any other day I would have devoured them eagerly, but today something felt off. I wrinkled my nose slightly as Wilson, our pack housekeeper, approached with the steaming plate. Is there any millet porridge? Wilson's eyebrows rose slightly. Master ate some earlier. There should be some left over. Millet porridge was Roman's favorite. He'd always preferred milder flavors, something I'd teased him about countless times. Give me the millet porridge, then, I decided, pushing the venison aside decisively. My wolf Cora seemed pleased with this choice, settling contentedly beneath my skin. Wilson nodded, signaling a pack servant who quickly disappeared into the kitchen. Within minutes, a bowl of steaming millet porridge appeared before me. I took a spoonful, savoring the subtle taste. Strange, I'd always found it bland before, but today it tasted refreshingly delightful. I had barely taken 2 more spoonfuls when my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Emma, I answered, setting down my spoon. Scarlett, save me! Emma's frantic voice came through the speaker, high-pitched and desperate. I blinked in surprise. This was not the Emma I knew, the confident, sometimes sassy healer who'd never shied away from speaking her mind. Had being around Erik truly reduced her to this state? Woo-woo, Emma sobbed into the phone. Erik wants to take me somewhere later, and he said it might be dangerous. Scarlett, save me. I never want to experience that kind of situation again. Her fear was palpable even through the phone. The strong, spirited Emma had been replaced by someone terrified to the core. Where are you going? I asked, genuinely concerned now. Emma's desperate wail came through the phone. I don't know. He even said he'd guarantee my safety. If he has to say that, it definitely means there will be danger, right? I fell silent, considering this. Erik wasn't known for frequenting peaceful locations. Most places the European Alpha visited involved some element of risk. Scarlett, when are you coming back to the European territories? Emma pressed. I'm really going crazy. Her voice cracked on the last word, revealing the depth of her distress. She truly believed she would either be scared to death by Erik or driven mad by fear. There's no set date for my return yet, I replied gently, trying to soothe her. Try not to worry too much. I'm not worried, I'm scared. Emma corrected me immediately. I really don't want to go anywhere with him. I considered our options carefully. How about I have my enforcers pick you up? To take me to the Thornpack compound? Emma asked hopefully. Besides the main Thornpack compound, where else would be truly safe for you right now? I reasoned. It means you weren't safe even after leaving the Northern Territories. Emma fell silent, absorbing the truth in my words. But I could almost feel her hesitation through the phone. The prospect of living under Luna Catherine's roof clearly terrified her. Scarlett, when exactly are you coming back? She sounded desperate again. I understood her immediately. She wanted me as a buffer between herself and my intimidating family. If I come back, will you return to the Thornpack house with me? I countered. Ah, don't you have your own villa here? Emma asked quickly. Why must we stay there? I do have my own places, I confirmed, thinking of the various properties Roman had secured in my name. So, can't we stay in one of your other houses? Emma pleaded. Are you sure? I asked pointedly. The line went silent for a moment. I could practically hear the realization dawning on her. If we did that, Roman would probably want to skin me alive. Let's forget it. I smiled slightly. Emma had finally grasped the reality of my situation. I was surrounded by incredibly powerful figures. My adoptive mother, Luna Catherine, my mate Roman, the Shadow King himself. Perhaps Emma was only now realizing she'd befriended someone at the center of a web of power. I chuckled lightly. All right, let's talk more when I get back. Oh! Emma sounded utterly dejected. Actually, Alpha Blackwood is very reliable, I tried to reassure her. Since he said he'd help you investigate thoroughly, we should trust him. Don't worry, he won't make things difficult for you. I had complete faith in Roman's judgment. If Roman trusted Erik with Emma's safety, then she would be fine. He is making things difficult for me, Emma mumbled despondently. I was genuinely surprised by this. He threatened me, she complained. Impossible, I dismissed immediately. Alpha Blackwood isn't that kind of wolf. You shouldn't feel that way. Emma's defeated sigh came through the phone. Fine, whatever you say. I continued trying to comfort her until a knock sounded on her end, prompting her to end our call abruptly. Erik had ordered me to change clothes, but when I opened the closet in my room, I found only men's clothing, suits, dress shirts, sweaters, all clearly belonging to him. I glanced down at the oversized, hooded sweater I was currently wearing, another of Erik's belongings. On me it hung like a dress, the sleeves rolled up several times to free my hands. When the knock came again, more insistent this time, I reluctantly opened the door. Erik stood there, tall and imposing, his expression darkening as he took in my unchanged appearance. "What have you been doing all this time?" he demanded, his amber eyes sweeping over me. I remained silent, though internally I screamed, calling Scarlett for backup, obviously. But remembering Scarlett's unhelpful, almost scared defense of Erik, my heart sank further. I was truly on my own. "I don't have any clothes," I finally said, looking up at him with what I hoped was a pitiful expression. "Am I supposed to put on one of your suits?" The contrast between us couldn't have been more stark. The sweater I wore was already absurdly large. Erik towered over me at what must have been 6'3" or 6'4", making my face barely reach his chest. His build was broad and muscular, easily twice my size. His suit jacket would probably reach my knees. Erik's amber eyes narrowed slightly. "Where are your clothes?" "My luggage was definitely lost during the chase at the airport," I explained, recalling the terrifying moment when escaping with my life had been the only priority. I hesitated, feeling heat rise to my cheeks, as I forced myself to ask the question that had been bothering me. "The outfit I was wearing. Where did you put it after you took it off me?" The words hung in the air between us, making my cheeks burn even hotter. Erik's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or something I couldn't quite identify. Chapter 237, Confrontations and Awkward Apologies. "I've looked everywhere, but I can't find it," Emma said, her voice small with embarrassment as she gestured to the borrowed sweater she was wearing. Erik's expression darkened instantly. He checked his watch, his jaw tightening. "It's too late to have clothes delivered now," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Without another word, he strode to his wardrobe and began rummaging through it with quick, efficient movements. After a moment, he pulled out a smoky gray pullover hoodie, something that looked barely worn. "Here." he said, tossing it to Emma. She caught it awkwardly, holding it up to examine it. The hoodie was enormous compared to her petite frame. When she slipped it on over her head, it hung loosely around her shoulders and reached nearly to her knees. Despite its oversized nature, there was something almost fashionable about how it draped over her small body. Emma looked down at herself, tugging at the hem of the hoodie. A sudden shiver ran through her as the cold air from the hallway brushed against her bare legs. "I'm cold," she said, looking up at Erik pitifully. Erik's jaw tightened visibly. He stared at her for a moment, clearly annoyed at having to deal with this new problem. Female wolves were naturally less resistant to cold than males, and the European territory was particularly frigid this time of year. "Troublesome," he muttered under his breath. With obvious reluctance, he turned back to his closet and pulled out a thick down jacket, another item he rarely used. As an alpha wolf, his body temperature naturally ran hotter than most, making such heavy clothing unnecessary for him. He held it out to Emma, who quickly wrapped herself in it. The jacket swallowed her completely, making her look like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice muffled by the jacket's high collar. Erik merely grunted in response, checking his watch impatiently. "Let's go," he said, heading for the door without waiting to see if she followed. Outside, a spacious, heavily armored SUV waited in the driveway. Tristan sat in the driver's seat with Maliki beside him in the front passenger seat. As Erik approached with Emma trailing behind him, Leo quickly retreated to the back row, leaving the middle seats open. The moment Leo got a clear view of Emma's face, his eyes widened in surprise. The alpha's type this time was different, very different from the tall, leggy she-wolves he usually associated with. This one was tiny, almost delicate-looking, especially swallowed up in Erik's oversized clothes. Leo's gaze darted between Erik's imposing, muscular figure and Emma's petite form. The size difference was startling. Erik could probably snap her in half with minimal effort. Leo thought to himself, his mind racing with implications. Did this mean Erik's rumored issue was resolved? Had the alpha found his preference at last? All those stunning model-like she-wolves who'd failed to capture his interest, and it turned out he preferred them small? Unable to contain his curiosity, Leo leaned forward slightly. "Alpha," he ventured cautiously. "What?" Erik's tone was clipped, warning. "The Luna, the she-wolf," Leo continued, choosing his words carefully. "Is she coming with us now? Are you sure? She can handle it?" The emphasis on handle it was unmistakable. Even Maliki in the front seat tensed, recognizing the dangerous subtext of Leo's question. Maliki thought. Wasn't it enough to speculate behind the alpha's back? Now he was testing waters directly? Emma caught the suggestive tone immediately. Her lips tightened as she glanced at Erik, tears welling up in her eyes again at this new humiliation. Erik's expression darkened ominously. He turned in his seat, fixing Leo with a glare that could have frozen fire. "I seem to recall the last time I threatened to rip that mouth of yours off," he said softly, his voice deadly calm. "When was that again?" Leo froze, his heart pounding against his ribs. He didn't dare utter another word, clamping his mouth shut with an almost audible snap. The alpha was as terrifying as ever, and having one's mouth ripped off was not a metaphor in their world. The tension in the car was thick enough to cut with a claw as they pulled away from the villa. Meanwhile, across the territory, Scarlett Winters was preparing to leave Shadow Valley. She had initially worried about Emma, but after their conversation, she'd grown somewhat accustomed to the situation. Roman had contacted her through their mate bond earlier, mentioning he likely wouldn't return until afternoon. With time to spare, Scarlett had arranged to meet Hazel Walsh for lunch. She checked her appearance one last time in the mirror, her emerald eyes bright against her pale skin, before heading out. As her car approached the main road, about 2 kilometers from the villa gates, the driver suddenly slowed. "Miss Winters, we can't get through," Mark informed her, gesturing ahead. A powerful black SUV was parked horizontally across the junction where their private road met the main territory route. Leaning against it was a familiar figure, Alexander Amber. Through the windshield, Scarlett could see how disheveled he looked. His usually impeccable appearance was marred by rumpled clothes and what appeared to be several days' worth of stubble. The cold wind ruffled his hair, giving him an almost wild appearance. Frowning, Scarlett's phone rang. She answered it quickly. Hazel. Scarlett, I'm waiting for you at the cafe on Thornwood Street corner. Hazel's voice came through clearly. Okay, Scarlett replied, her eyes still fixed on Alexander. She hung up, then pushed open her car door without hesitation, stepping out into the cold air. She observed Alexander from a distance, making no move to approach him. When Alexander spotted her, his eyes seemed to light up briefly before returning to their hollow, empty state. He was holding a cigarette between his fingers, dressed inappropriately thin for the frigid weather. The stubble on his chin completed his haggard appearance, a striking contrast to the proud, the impeccable Northern Alpha air everyone knew. Scarlett leaned against her car door, her posture deliberately casual despite her internal wariness. What are you doing? She asked coldly. Blocking the road like this was bold, even for him. Scarlett didn't believe he was waiting for Roman. His brazenness suggested he knew Roman was occupied elsewhere. The fact that he dared to block her path made her wonder if the Amber Pack was truly as desperate as rumors suggested. However, Scarlett was mistaken. It was precisely because the Amber Pack was in dire straits and Alexander himself was on the verge of mental collapse that he was here. Alexander dropped his cigarette, crushing it beneath his heel before walking toward her. Scarlett frowned, displeased by his approach. He stopped about a meter away, close enough for Scarlett to clearly see the turbulent emotions in his eyes: emptiness, sorrow, pain. All these feelings converged, visible in Alexander's haunted gaze. Scarlett narrowed her eyes slightly. Still pleading for Grace Winter? She couldn't imagine any other reason for such emotions in Alexander, despite the various rumors Emma and Hazel had relayed about the Winter Pack recently. In Scarlett's view, Sarah Winter and Alexander's bias towards Grace surpassed everything else. Hearing her words, the pain in Alexander's eyes intensified. Pleading? The words seemed to carry infinite anguish for him. Scarlett raised an eyebrow. No, not pleading. Threatening me? Using your alpha influence? Yes, previously, whether it was the Winter Pack or Alexander himself, they hadn't pleaded. They had directly tried to use their status and power to suppress her, to make her let Grace go. Alexander felt his chest constrict at her words, as if it would explode from suffocation upon hearing the words threatening and suppressing. He closed his eyes, his entire body trembling slightly as he fought for control. Clenching his fists, he finally managed to say with difficulty, I've already broken things off with her. Scarlett raised an eyebrow, watching Alexander silently. Her mind flashed back to the gossip Emma had shared earlier, about Alexander kicking over a ceremonial bowl outside the Winter Pack house after visiting Grace. Scarlett, Alexander began, his voice rough with emotion, I'm very sorry. Scarlett's brow twitched at his sudden apology. You're apologizing to me? I wronged you, Alexander trailed off, struggling to continue. So much had happened since last night. His mind was chaotic. After leaving the Amber Pack estate amidst turmoil, his only thought was to see Scarlett. He desperately wanted to see her. No one knew how empty he had felt since she broke off their arranged mating, as if the most vital part of his wolf, Mason, had been gouged out. Scarlett cut him off sharply. There's no need for apologies. You really shouldn't have come to see me. Move your car. Unwilling to hear more, she turned and got back into her car. Just as she was about to close the door, Alexander rushed forward and grabbed it. You, he began desperately. Scarlett instinctively started to raise her foot, her combat training kicking in without conscious thought. Seeing her defensive action, Alexander's expression changed drastically. He instantly retreated to a safe distance. He remembered. Scarlett seemed deeply uncomfortable with physical contact, especially from him. During their arranged engagement, she had always resisted his attempts to get close. After the engagement broke off, every time he grabbed her wrist, she had resorted to violence. Was she about to kick him again now? Recalling the previous injuries, Alexander's composure faltered. Seeing him retreat, Scarlett realized she had almost instinctively tried to kick him hard. Sorry, she said awkwardly. You've left quite the psychological scar on me. My usual instincts involve force. It's best if you don't appear before me, otherwise it'd be rather unpleasant if I hit you. Alexander was speechless, his mouth opening and closing without sound. The driver, Mark, in the front seat, thought to himself, "My young lady is surprisingly polite, knowing it's wrong to hit people." Chapter 238. He used to think she couldn't live without him. My face felt cold, and it wasn't just from the biting winter air. Standing before Scarlett's car, I felt my carefully rehearsed words vanish from my mind. Though I'd mentally prepared myself to face her, her cold indifference cut deeper than I expected. "Can you move your vehicle, or should I just crash into it?" Scarlett demanded from her car window. The casual way she mentioned crashing into my car, as if discussing the weather, made me flinch. I'd forgotten how direct she could be, how unlike other she-wolves who softened their words. My fists clenched involuntarily as the chaos from last night flashed through my mind. The young wolf with features so similar to mine arriving at the Amber estate, DNA tests confirming his relation to my father. Our pack thrown into turmoil. That wolf. The one Darian Morrison sent. "Can you get him to take him away?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I knew it had to be Darian, Scarlett's supposed promised mate from the Eastern Territories, who had delivered this explosive package to our doorstep. This had to be her revenge, orchestrated through her connections. Scarlett paused, her emerald eyes narrowing slightly. "The wolf Darian sent? What are you talking about?" Her confusion seemed genuine, but I refused to believe it. "Are you serious? Starting that innocent act again?" She tensed visibly, her voice taking on that razor-sharp edge I remembered all too well. "There you go again. Just like whenever Grace was involved." The comparison stung. I pressed forward, desperate to make her understand. "He appeared at the Amber Pack house with lineage proof matching my father." My voice cracked slightly as I continued. "Scarlett, I know you resent me for calling off our mating ceremony, but you shouldn't." Pain filled my chest, making it hard to finish. "You shouldn't take revenge on me like this." Scarlett's laugh was cold and dismissive. "You think I resent you? Don't flatter yourself. Resentment? Only Grace Winter feels that kind of thing for you. Who else would care?" Her words sliced through me with surgical precision. "Resentment requires deep feelings," she continued disdainfully. "Something I never had for you." I felt my wolf Mason whimper beneath my skin, wounded by her casual cruelty. "Resent you? Revenge?" Her eyes flashed dangerously. "Am I that idle? If I wanted revenge, would I need to handle it myself?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't personally acted against my family. She hadn't needed to. Roman Thorne had already systematically destroyed our business connections, and now Darian Morrison had delivered this final blow. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me, filled with sarcasm and self-mockery. "Scarlett Winters, I really underestimated you. You have such capabilities." I shook my head, the realization dawning with painful clarity. "Your adopted brother-turned-mate dotes on you, and even that promised mate you clearly don't want can execute schemes like this for you." Scarlett's expression suggested she thought I was losing my mind, but I couldn't stop the flow of painful truth. "I used to think that without me you couldn't even survive," I admitted, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. My wolf Mason howled in silent agony as I continued. "I thought your talk of breaking our engagement was just petulance, that you needed me." The memory of my arrogance made me wince. How wrong I had been. Scarlett didn't need me, had never needed me. All those times I'd believed I was her sole support, her only option for survival in the brutal world of pack politics. It had all been a delusion. I was a fool, I whispered, more to myself than to her. I'd completely lost patience with Alexander's neurotic ramblings. Rolling my eyes, I shut my car door with perhaps more force than necessary. "Ram it," I instructed Mark, my driver. There was no point talking to someone whose mind worked so differently from mine. It was a waste of breath and time. Mark, a loyal beta assigned by Roman, nodded in agreement. "Yes, miss." Just as our engine roared to life, Mark's voice came again, this time with a hint of relief. "Miss, the Alpha is back." I looked up through the windshield and saw Roman's imposing black car approaching rapidly. A smile tugged at my lips as I watched what happened next. Without slowing down, Roman's vehicle slammed into Alexander's car, sending it spinning off the road with a thunderous crash. "Truly my mate," I murmured appreciatively. Never wastes time. I exited my car without giving Alexander a second glance and walked toward Roman, who had emerged from his vehicle. His powerful frame radiated a chilling alpha aura that made even the air around him seem colder. Roman shot Alexander a dangerous look, his ice-blue eyes glinting like shards of glacier. Rare for the amber air to still be lingering here, but his gaze flickered deliberately to the damaged car. I never like my territory being invaded. Next time, watch where you're going. Don't take the wrong path. The threat in his words was unmistakable. I didn't need to look back to know Alexander was trembling, whether from fury or the cold. I neither knew nor cared. I stepped confidently beside Roman, our hands finding each other with practiced ease. The gesture was casual for us, but I knew it would feel like a knife to Alexander's heart. I have lunch plans with Hazel. Let's go, I said to Roman, eager to leave the tense confrontation behind. Roman pinched my nose affectionately before leading me to his car. Hunter Stone had taken position behind the wheel, and we slipped into the backseat together. I stood alone on the roadside, the cold wind biting at my exposed skin, but the chill in my heart was far worse. Scarlett's mocking dismissal echoed in my mind. She felt nothing for me, not even resentment. The realization was like a void opening inside me, vast and unbearable. What had our 2 years of arranged engagement meant to her? Had it been nothing but a pack obligation she endured? Every moment I'd treasured, every conversation I'd replayed in my mind, had they meant nothing? My wolf Mason paced restlessly beneath my skin, sharing my distress. I watched Roman's car disappear around the bend, taking Scarlett with it. She had moved on so completely it was as if I'd never existed in her world at all. Inside Roman's car, I squirmed slightly as he pulled me onto his lap. He'd always been possessive, even when I was a child, always wanting to hold me close whenever we were alone. I want to sit by myself, I muttered, though there was no real conviction in my protest. His hand rested proprietarily on my waist, which felt slightly softer lately. I tried not to think about what that might mean. "Are you upset?" he asked softly, his voice a low rumble that I could feel through his chest. It wasn't me who provoked him. He came looking for me, I explained, adopting a slightly pitiable tone that I knew would work on him. Roman's lips twitched with amusement. Haven't learned how to deal with them yet? It was an old conversation between us. Roman had always advised me to either ignore irrelevant wolves or use overwhelming force. There was no middle ground in his philosophy. I was just about to have Mark ram him when you arrived, I answered truthfully. Then I remembered something, tilting my head to look at him. Hey, I thought you said you'd be back this afternoon? Instead of answering with words, Roman's response was physical. His lips claimed mine in a deep, consuming kiss that ignited the bond between us with startling intensity. From the corner of my eye, I saw Hunter discreetly raise the privacy divider, giving us space. My wolf Cora purred contentedly beneath my skin, safe and cherished in the presence of her mate. When we finally arrived at the cafe on Thornwood Street, I was reluctant to leave the warmth of the car. Roman drove me personally to my lunch appointment with Hazel Walsh. As I got out of the car, my heel caught on the curb. I would have stumbled if not for Roman's lightning-quick reflexes, catching me firmly in his arms. "What's wrong?" "Can't even walk properly?" he teased, his ice-blue eyes glinting with amusement. I shot him an aggrieved look, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "It's all your fault," I complained softly. "You kissed me until my eyes were blurry and my legs felt like jelly." Chapter 239. Collapse. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone to my ear. The winter pack house, once the pride of the Northern Territories, now seemed to echo with our fallen status. "I know you have another family outside now with your twins. I can't control you, nor can I ask anything of you." My voice cracked with desperation. "But I beg you, don't be so cruel to us. You used to dote on Grace, too." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I clung to the hope that the years we spent raising Grace together meant something to Marcus. He couldn't be entirely heartless, not to the daughter he once cherished. "Sarah Winter, are you out of your mind?" Marcus' voice erupted through the speaker, his alpha power making the connection crackle and pop. "She has no blood relation to us, and she nearly killed Scarlett." My breath caught in my throat. How much did he know? "This is all your fault," he continued, his rage building. Your inappropriate handling of the younger generation, your excessive favoritism towards Grace. Look at the chaos you've created. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. And you're still thinking about treating her. What on earth are you thinking? After a moment of stunned silence, something inside me snapped. Then what should I do? I screamed back. I raised her with my own hands. Am I supposed to just watch her die now? The thought of Grace's silver-poisoned body withering away while we did nothing made my chest tighten unbearably. I can't do it! I really can't! That's your problem, Marcus retorted coldly. Don't drag all of us down with you. 30 million! Who do you think can come up with that kind of money right now? I tried to steady my breathing, to think clearly despite the panic clawing at my mind. We needed that money. Grace needed that treatment. And if pleading wouldn't work. So you're spending all the PAC resources on that woman Jennifer now, completely abandoning us, is that it? I switched tactics, my voice hardening with fury. Until now, preoccupied with Grace's crisis, I hadn't confronted Marcus about his mistress and their twins. I'd foolishly hoped to somehow mend our fractured home, but his attitude pushed me over the edge. Let me tell you, Marcus Winter. I hissed, shedding all pretense of civility. You'll give me this 30 million whether you want to or not. Not only the 30 million, but you'll also give us 5 million every month from now on. You're sick, Marcus spat, and the line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Had he just hung up on me? I tried calling back only to find he'd blocked my number. Ah! I screamed in frustration, throwing the phone across the room. When had it all started to unravel? When had our once proud PAC begun to crumble? My head throbbed with anger and confusion as I slumped into a chair. A knock at the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Ben, our PAC servant, entered with a small package. Luna, this arrived for you, he said, his expression carefully neutral. Still fuming, I took the secure data chip he offered, barely registering what it might contain. I inserted it into a reader, pulling up the contents with trembling fingers. Surveillance photos. My eyes widened as I recognized the figures in the first image. Grace sitting across from Jennifer Moore, Marcus's mistress. What is this? I murmured, my grip tightening on the reader as I flipped through more images. Ben looked on, equally bewildered. I don't know, Luna. It was delivered by courier. Behind the photos, I found more damning evidence. Grace's encrypted call logs showing frequent contact with Jennifer's number. PAC personnel files detailing Jennifer's entry into our financial advisory position, with Grace's signature on the recommendation. So that woman? Grace brought her into the PAC? My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. This. The realization struck me like lightning. My mind went blank, blood running cold as the full weight of Grace's betrayal crashed down on me. She had facilitated her own adoptive father's affair. She had invited this woman into our PAC, into our lives. The room began to spin. I heard Ben's voice as if from underwater. Luna, what's wrong? My legs gave out beneath me. The last thing I felt was the floor rushing up to meet me as darkness claimed my consciousness. Scarlett's POV. This new cafe has the most amazing berry tarts, Hazel said as we strolled along Thornwood Street. I think you'll love them. I nodded, enjoying the crisp winter air. That after the confrontation with Alexander earlier, this peaceful outing with Hazel was exactly what I needed. We were discussing dinner plans when Hazel's phone rang. She checked the caller ID, her expression shifting subtly. Hello, she answered, her tone professional. I assumed it was Connor Reynolds calling. Hazel had been increasingly resistant to his family PAC's influence lately, though she rarely discussed the details with me. But as she listened, her eyes widened in surprise. Is it serious? I see. Okay, I understand. She hung up, turning to me with an unexpected piece of news. Sarah Winter has been taken to the PAC Healing Center. I raised an eyebrow, oddly unmoved. Those around me rarely referred to Sarah as my mother, knowing the lack of any genuine maternal relationship between us. What happened? I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. Don't know exactly, Hazel replied. A colleague from the healing center called. If her health collapses now, the Winter PAC will be in even worse shape. I considered this silently. Worse shape? The Winter PAC was already a wreck. Their finances depleted, their heir crippled, and their adopted daughter dying of silver poisoning. But if Sarah was incapacitated, Grace would truly have no one left to care for her. Then it clicked. Her collapse this time is very likely because of Grace, I stated with quiet certainty. Hazel looked puzzled. What do you mean? Those little rumors you heard about Jennifer Moore, I elaborated, watching comprehension slowly dawn on her face. Emma confirmed them. They're all true. Hazel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Moon goddess. I thought those rumors were terrifying just hearing them. I can't believe they're real. She shook her head in disbelief. What kind of creature has Sarah been protecting all these years? Her guidance for Grace was excellent, I commented dryly. At least it made her clearly distinguish between kin and outsiders. The irony wasn't lost on Hazel, who chuckled humorlessly. She used to accuse you of the same, didn't she? Not accepting Grace as family? She must be losing her mind, Hazel added after a moment. I remained cynical. Hard to say. She might just crawl out of the healing den and keep trying to find ways to help Grace. My wolf, Cora, stirred restlessly beneath my skin at the mention of Grace's name. Some wounds, it seemed, never fully healed. Hazel shuddered slightly. Well, either way, it has nothing to do with you anymore. Exactly, I agreed, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders at the simple truth of it. I was heading back to the Eastern Territories soon. Not just the Winter Pack, but the Northern Territories themselves would soon be behind me. Let them drown in the consequences of their choices. I had a future to embrace with Roman. We walked hand in hand toward a nearby restaurant Hazel had recommended. Just as we reached the entrance, her phone rang again. Another update? I asked as she answered. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. Hanging up, she turned to me with a grave look. She took it really hard this time, might not pull through. I searched myself for some emotional response, grief perhaps, or even vindication, but found my heart remained calm. Not out of cruelty, but from a genuine lack of connection, compounded by the Pack's treatment of me since my return. Then Grace is truly doomed, I remarked quietly. If Sarah passed away or remained incapacitated, Grace would mean nothing to the remaining Winter Pack. Daniel was too consumed with his own problems, and Marcus had clearly moved on to his new family. There would be no one left to champion her cause, no one to fund the expensive treatments for her silver poisoning. Inside the restaurant, we settled into a cozy booth by the window. As we perused the menu, I felt the familiar warmth of Roman reaching out through our mate bond. No spicy food. No. His voice echoed gently in my mind. I smiled to myself. Even from a distance, he was taking care of me. Okay, I know, I replied mentally, mindful of my ongoing recovery from the mating injuries. After our mental connection faded, I looked up to find Hazel watching me with a soft expression. Your alpha is so good to you, she said with a smile. He won't be just my alpha protector in the future, I corrected her gently. Hazel looked surprised. We're going to have our mating ceremony, I stated plainly, unable to keep a hint of joy from my voice. Something flickered across Hazel's face, a momentary, quickly concealed sadness, before she smiled sincerely. Congratulations, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Marking, that's wonderful. I studied her face carefully, wondering about the brief shadow I'd seen. What about you and Connor? I asked, turning the question back to her. When are you planning to? Chapter 240, Whispers and Warnings. Speaking of which, I said, stirring my tea thoughtfully as I looked at Hazel across the table. Her situation reminded me eerily of experiences I'd once faced. Hazel had been just 5 years old when her father died, saving Connor Reynolds' father during a territory dispute. The Reynolds pack took her in afterward, but her welcome had been far from warm. Connor's mother, Luna Reynolds, had made it painfully clear that the orphaned she-wolf was merely a burden they'd accepted out of obligation. Only Connor and his father had truly protected her from the pack's disdain. After the elder Alpha Reynolds passed away, Connor became her sole defender. Anyone with eyes could see how deeply he cherished her. His wolf practically radiated protectiveness whenever she was nearby. I really can't believe Connor doesn't feel something deeper for you, I said gently. What's happening between you two? Hazel's expression immediately stiffened, her fingers tightening around her teacup. Him and me? She asked, her voice strained. I nodded, sensing I'd touched a sensitive nerve. Yes. Hazel fell silent. I could almost see memories flickering behind her eyes, likely recollections of pack whispers and sidelong glances. The pain in her expression was suffocating to witness. His mother has recently been looking for suitable mating candidates for him, she finally revealed, her voice barely above a whisper. The news hit me like a physical blow. An arranged mating? I couldn't hide my shock. Connor shouldn't need an arranged mating to consolidate the Reynolds pack's power, right? Connor was widely respected as one of the most dominant alphas of the younger generation. Under his leadership, the Reynolds pack had not just survived, but thrived. There was no logical reason to force him into a political alliance. Hazel offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes, saying nothing. That very smile, however, revealed the depth of sadness she carried. Luna Reynolds came to see me at the pack healing den this morning, she continued, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the tablecloth. What did she say? I asked, though I could already guess. What else could she say, telling me to recognize my place as an outsider? The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Anger flared within me at Luna Reynolds' cruelty. That's outrageous, I fumed, unable to contain my indignation. If the former Alpha Reynolds had died back then, the Reynolds pack wouldn't have survived until Connor took over. You're practically a benefactor to their pack, and she treats you like this. It seemed the Winter pack weren't the only ones lacking basic decency. Luna Reynolds was just as heartless. Perhaps even more so considering the sacrifice Hazel's father had made. So what's Connor's attitude now? I asked, hoping he wouldn't agree to a mating arrangement, given his obvious feelings for Hazel. He often took her on territory visits, behavior typically reserved for potential mates or close confidants. Instead of answering, Hazel handed me the menu she'd marked with her selections. Let's not talk about him, she said firmly. I noticed how the mere mention of the Reynolds pack had visibly agitated her. Though Luna Reynolds had always disliked Hazel, Connor's protection usually limited their interactions. Today, however, Hazel seemed particularly distressed when discussing the pack, suggesting the situation had deteriorated beyond the usual tension. I quickly made my selections and gave the menu to the waiting pack servant. Just then, I felt the familiar warmth of Roman reaching through our mate bond. Don't eat too much for lunch. I'll bring you something delicious later. His thoughts were gentle but carried that firm edge I'd grown accustomed to. A smile touched my lips. What delicious food, I sent back, feeling warmth spread through my heart from our connection. You'll know soon enough, came his cryptic reply before the connection faded. Hazel observed my expression with a wistful smile. Scarlett, I truly envy you. They all love you so much. They meant the entire Thorn Pack and their allies, wolves who had genuinely accepted me as one of their own, despite the lack of blood ties. Don't envy me, I replied, trying to lighten the mood. Plenty of wolves dislike me too. The Winter Pack immediately sprang to mind. Despite our blood connection, our relationship remained painfully strained. Hazel rolled her eyes at the mention of the Winter Pack. There are always worthless wolves everywhere. Isn't that the truth? I agreed with a short laugh. Regardless, Hazel continued, her voice growing softer with sorrow, you have so many powerful wolves protecting you, while I... She trailed off, eyes downcast. The unspoken words hung heavily between us. She had nothing. Her mother had abandoned both her and her father, claiming they were too weak to deserve her loyalty. She and her father had relied on each other exclusively, and then her only loving protector had died saving another alpha. I reached across the table, placing my hand over her cold one. Don't say that. You still have Connor. Everyone in the Northern Territories had witnessed how Connor treated her. His alpha protectiveness was impossible to miss, and no one dared bully Hazel when he was present. Hazel didn't reply, merely nodding slightly. I understood that Luna Reynolds was causing serious trouble between them, which explained Hazel's distress. I was about to offer more words of comfort when my phone rang. Emma's name flashed across the screen. Emma, I answered, concerned about my friend who was still stuck in Erik's European villa. Scarlett, when are you coming back? Wah! Emma burst into tears instantly. I frowned, caught off guard by her emotional outburst. What's wrong with you? Emma sobbed loudly, struggling to speak through her tears. I'll die if I stay with this alpha any longer. Woo. I almost died today. Woo, woo. Her crying grew increasingly uncontrollable, her breathing becoming ragged gasps. I could almost hear her wolf whimpering beneath her skin. "What did Erik Blackwood do to you now?" I asked, alarmed by her claim of nearly dying. In the European territories, danger wasn't uncommon. Erik's position meant he dealt with certain networks and rivalries that frequently led to dangerous situations. Having Emma with him during such encounters was bound to expose her to more risk than she was accustomed to. He said he was taking me out to meet someone, but we didn't meet anyone, and I almost got killed. Woo! Emma's voice broke with each word. "Scarlett, come back quickly. I'm scared I'll never see you again. It terrified me. Woo!" Her fear was raw and genuine, a stark contrast to her usually confident demeanor. She clearly wanted out of Erik's dangerous orbit immediately. Third person. The elegant living room of Erik Blackwood's villa was filled with cigarette smoke as the alpha sat in contemplative silence. His amber eyes stared unseeing at the antique coffee table, his mind occupied with the events of the day. Leo descended the curved staircase from the study, carrying several data pads containing pack intelligence reports. He approached Erik cautiously, extending the pads toward his alpha. "Alpha, she's crying really hard," Leo whispered as he handed over the reports. He'd heard Emma's sobs clearly as he passed her door, the sound distinctive even through the thick wooden panels. Tristan, who sat in a nearby armchair reviewing security protocols, visibly tensed at Leo's words. Leo had been instructed simply to fetch the intelligence reports. Eavesdropping on the she-wolf wasn't part of his duties, a dangerous boundary to cross with their notoriously private alpha. Erik's expression remained unreadable as he glanced at Leo, though the weight of his wolf's presence grew heavier in the room, like the pressure before a storm. Undeterred by the warning signs, Leo continued, "The she-wolf doesn't even trust you can protect her. Look how scared she is." Tristan and Malachi exchanged alarmed glances, mentally facepalming at Leo's recklessness. They could sense the cold alpha power radiating from Erik, the temperature in the room seeming to drop several degrees. They tried frantically to signal Leo to stop talking, making subtle cutting gestures across their throats, but he seemed oblivious to their warnings. Erik's jaw tightened. He tossed the datapad onto the table with a clatter and rose to his feet in one fluid motion. Without a word, he strode toward the staircase, his posture rigid with controlled anger. "Alpha," Leo started, but Tristan quickly lunged forward, clamping a hand over the imprudent wolf's mouth. "You daredevil, aren't you afraid of death?" Tristan hissed into Leo's ear. "Gossiping about anything involving the alpha?" Leo's eyes widened with bewilderment. In his mind, he hadn't been gossiping. He'd merely reported what he'd overheard, thinking it might be relevant information. Upstairs, Erik reached Emma's door with measured steps. Through the thick wood, he could clearly hear her tearful voice as she continued her conversation with Scarlett. "He's just a ruthless alpha. I worry he'll rip my throat out if he gets unhappy. Woo, woo, woo." The accusations flowed freely between miserable sobs. Erik's face darkened, his expression turning thunderous. Without hesitation, he twisted the doorknob and pushed the door open.